everyone talking about 5 ways that my taste has changed since getting more into fragrance versus like when I wore the same fragrance for 8 years or whatever and didn't think that much of it. So yeah, not in any particular order. I don't know what the order would even be. Like, this has changed drastically and this has only changed a tad. But yeah, I'm just gonna jump in. 1, Animalic Notes. So I feel like this is probably fairly common for this to be a situation with people like who, when you first start smelling more fragrances, it's just like, oh my god, that's disgusting. Not that everybody thinks that, but I sure did, and I know that a lot of people that I've talked to did as well, where it's just like, who would wear this? I can't believe this used to be considered sexy, or still is today by many people. And just like, yuck, like smells like trash and unspeakable things. But over time, the more I smelled stuff, and I remember I made a list at one point of like my least favorite notes. This was before I even had the channel. I didn't do a video of it, but I know for sure like Castoreum was on there, probably Civet. And now it's like, if I see Civet or Castoreum, it's kind of like, ooh, okay, maybe that'll give it an interesting, slightly smoky, animalic edge. And I don't always love them. Sometimes it is a little bit too much, but I actually do. I don't get, like when I see it, and I actually a lot of the time do like them now, especially when they're kind of well blended. So if you are kind of newer to fragrance and you just hate animalic stuff that you've tried, it is totally possible that you will come around to that. 2, incense. For me, I think part of this is more personal about having grown up in the Bay Area, because it was like Telegraph Avenue, Haight-Ashbury, like so many places that I would hang out were like a lot of hippie shops on those type of places burning incense. So I just associated it with like kind of washed up hippie types, and just just like something where it was just like, okay, like those, because I was more going there for like the punk vibes, not the hippie stores so much. So that just felt like, incense, that's so old school and hippie-ish and blah blah blah. But the more stuff I smelled with it, it's lost some of that association for me. So now, and I also saw there's so much nuance in it. There's so much difference between like Nagchampa incense, or like one that's, even more churchy, or one that's kind of cold versus warm, or Olibanum itself, which is like frankincense, and dragon's blood incense. Like there's just so many different types, and now I see that too. Like, oh, okay, even if you don't like some incense, it can make sense to still keep trying different kinds, and maybe you won't hate all of them. 3, when I first started smelling stuff, I used to feel like everything was full bottle worthy. And at the time, often I would be like to my wife, like, smell this, what do you think? Or like on my arm or whatever. And she would be like, I don't like it. And I would be so disappointed, like, like it's not like she would be like, you can't buy that or something like that. But it's like, I'm not going to wear something around, my wife who I live with that she doesn't like, both for like rude reasons, and also like that's going to be a buzzkill if I'm wearing that and someone's like, you stink, or something, or making faces about it. But yeah, so I'm glad in retrospect that she unintentionally really tempered down that, so that I was kind of able to smell a lot more stuff and realize like, oh, okay, no, I was a little bit too optimistic, and there's enough stuff that I really love out there that I don't need to settle for just like, oh, I really like this. Like, and that's fine if you do. A lot of people love having a really big collection, but for me at least, I would rather just have it just be like hit after hit, and only ones that I like absolutely worship. Versus at the beginning, it felt like anything I smelled that I kind of liked, or even kind of really liked, but just basically didn't think actually sucked, it would feel like, ooh, I want to get a bottle of this, especially if it was affordable. And now I'm like, okay, I'd rather have one, if I had a certain budget, like expensive bottle, versus buying 5 cheapies that aren't as good. Again, not telling anybody else you should feel that way, but for me, that definitely changed over time. 4, way more open to unisex fragrances. I mean, completely at this point now, that's honestly one of my favorite genres at this point. And also in terms of smelling ones that are more feminine leaning, I still haven't found any that I personally want to wear that are, I would say, like explicitly feminine leaning. But I'm now at this point, I'm just so interested and passionate about anything with fragrance that I absolutely love to smell just anything I can. Doesn't matter who it's marketed to or whether it's more feminine, masculine, or unisex. And at the beginning, which wasn't even that long ago, I only would seek out stuff that was labeled masculine, because I think it was a combination of one, I just assumed that I wouldn't really like it, to wear for myself, at least if it was like feminine or unisex, like, oh, that's probably what I'm gonna like. And 2, probably partially some aspect of insecurity of like, that's not manly enough if I get something that's not masculine. I'm not saying this as a diss to anybody who does prefer anything, whether it's just unisex or just feminine or just masculine. You should totally just wear what you want. But for me, that definitely changed, and I was able, and I'm glad that it helped me kind of let go of maybe some insecurities around that I had that was stop holding me back from trying more things or feeling comfortable wearing more things. And at this point, it's just like, yeah, I noticed that a lot of the ones that are more masculine leaning, it's just a little bit too dour, or certain notes I don't like as much sometimes. So my favorite, I would say, tends to be like unisex leaning masculine. But yeah, definitely so much more open to unisex, to smelling feminine leaning ones, whatever. And if I found a feminine leaning one that I felt was full body worthy and wanted to wear, I mean, I would at this point, also because from my observations, a lot of the time, if you don't, if you're not very feminine presenting, then people are not necessarily even going to think that it smells feminine. And a lot of what they're going off of is like the combination of how you come across and the smell and stuff. And it smells way different than if it's just like out of context. Plus, it smells different on your skin. So, yeah. And then 5, way more open to trying things with notes that I hate. So, as I started to, there were certain notes I knew that I didn't like from the beginning, like patchouli or I thought at the time Animalics or rose. Like some of those I still don't like patchouli and rose. But I would avoid trying anything that had those in it. Like, even if everything else in it looked good, I would be like, oh, no, why? Why did they have to put that in it? It's going to ruin it. And then I started to find some exceptions. The first major one that really blew my mind that comes to mind is the Paradam by Apothecary Tepe. And that is made of Mysore sandalwood, a kind of jasmine, and lily. And I would have thought, there's no way I'm going to like that. First of all, I thought I hated or not hated, but I thought I didn't like sandalwood. And as I always talk about now, it turns out I love Mysore sandalwood. It smells there's different sandalwoods smell completely different. And it's really like Australian sandalwood, Caledonian, and some other kinds that I don't like. So specific and niche. But, and jasmine, I like the smell in the wild, if I was walking around and there was like some fresh jasmine, like sure, I like that smell, but it just comes across so indolic and too like bouquet-ish to me. And lily I don't usually like, but I love that fragrance, the Paradam. So that started me thinking like, oh, okay, I shouldn't just write off stuff that has notes I might not like, because sometimes they're done in a way where they're just blended and it's like alchemy or something. It becomes this whole new different type of scent. Or maybe there's just a certain type of it that smells different and I do like that one or something like that. So now I try not to let that hold me back. Or for example, like something like oud. I don't like oud overall, but there has been the occasion where I definitely do love fragrances that have some oud in it, and there's so many different kinds of oud as well. So yeah, now it's like, okay, I also see on, going along with that just because something is solely composed of notes that I like does not mean I'm gonna like it, let alone love it. There's been too many times now where I've tried that and it's just like, like I don't love that. That's, so I definitely I've shied away. It took some time to kind of really believe that, but now I have, and I'm like, okay, I get it now. Like, I'm not just gonna try things with notes I like, and I'm not going to avoid things with notes I don't like. Obviously, it makes sense to go in the direction of ones you like. Like, it's gonna be more likely that I like something that has notes that I know I tend to like versus ones I hate. But it just is so far from being a strict rule at this point. And one kind of bonus one outside of actually wearable fragrance is I feel like, interestingly, I can tolerate some bad smells more now. Not even just in terms of wearable fragrance, because at this point I've smelled some, thousands of fragrances and I'm very used to just smelling stuff that's gross. And I still don't love that, but I can get an interesting experience out of it. But I mean, like, say, I don't know, outside smell coming through the window, or like burnt rubber, although now I like that smell, or just like different things in public that could otherwise smell gross. Now I feel like my brain's thinking of it in a more fragrancy way, like I'm thinking about the nuances of it more, like, oh yeah, that's interesting. And like, instead of it just being like, ugh, bad, like, it's not like I want to go out and smell a pile of trash or something. But I would totally sample a fragrance if it was called A Pile of Trash, or I Am Trash by Etat Libre d'Orange. I like that one. But yeah, now it's like I feel like fragrance just in general has a whole different perspective to me, and I can tolerate certain things that have been like, oh, that's so gross before, because now it's like, okay, it can't be grosser than some of the really nasty niche stuff that I've tried. So yeah, curious for anybody else if there's been ways that you've observed your fragrance taste and stuff like that with scent in general changing after you've tried more stuff, but these are mine.